And just a reminder that this program will be recorded. We are going to live stream it on Facebook, so it'll be archived there, but it'll also be archived on our YouTube channel as well. We'll be providing links to all of that in the chat throughout the session today, so you can learn more about upcoming programs and any updates that are coming from the aquarium or the marine station. So let's see here. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get us going on Facebook here, guys, so that we can get started. So give me just a moment to do that. Keep using the chat box. Let us know where you're coming in from. And we'll go live on Facebook, and then we'll go from there. I'm excited about today's session. Like anything with sea turtles, I always think is so cool. And it's neat because I feel like I learn something new every time. You know, I've been a marine science educator for enough time that, you know, it's always interesting when I hear a new perspective on something that we teach, or if there's new information or whatever. I love hearing about it. So I've been kind of excited about this one. Okay.
Well, thanks. That's good to always hear that there's some excitement. Was that Fishkill, Kentucky that I saw?
Fishkill, New York.
Oh, New York. Okay.
Okay. Somebody from Atlanta. Excellent. North Dakota. Wow.
Nice. I won't tease you with the beach pictures.
They might need it this time of year, you know, if you're from North Dakota. Melbourne Beach. Hello.
Oh, hi, Celeste.
All righty. Okay, well, we can go ahead and just do kind of some housekeeping items here. My name is Erin Lomax, by the way. I'm a marine science educator at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystems exhibit, and welcome to our Marine Science in the Morning lecture series. So this series highlights current marine science research that's presented by the researchers themselves, and this year we're focusing on women in STEM. And STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This is an annual winter/spring speaker series at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystems exhibit at the St. Lucie County Aquarium in Fort Pierce, Florida. And normally this is an in-person program, but this year we're running it on a virtual platform. Information about and links to register for upcoming Marine Science in the Morning events and other events that we have going on are available on our Facebook page, and that is facebook.com/SmithsonianSMS. Now, as everybody joins the webinar, I do want to point out some of the features. You can use the Q&A box to ask questions to our guest. The Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. It has 2 speech bubbles, and you can submit a question at any time, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible at the end of our program. There will be another educator on in the background to help keep track of your questions. So if you see a message in the chat box, it will probably be coming from Jamil Wilson, who is our digital programming intern. And throughout the program, you can use the chat box to send us messages and answer any questions we might have for you. Your comments are only visible to Smithsonian staff, so please keep your comments on topic and appropriate. And just as a reminder, again, this webinar will be recorded. It'll be found on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well. Today's program will probably last for 45 to 60 minutes, somewhere around in there. So Ashley will present first, and then at the end, we'll build in some time for your questions as well. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Let me just verify that all systems are go. All right, excellent. So I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker. Today's speaker is Ashley Britt Chelberg. She is a graduate of Nova Southeastern University with a double master's in marine biology and coastal zone management. She has worked as a marine biologist and is the founder and director of Stella Maris Environmental Research, whose work is to protect, conserve, and assist in identifying solutions for inshore, nearshore, and offshore coastal ecosystems through scientific research, monitoring, and public education. Today, she'll be talking about her work with sea turtle hatchling orientation indexing and why light mitigation on our beaches is so important. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Wonderful.
And I'm so excited that all of you are joining us too. It's great.
Yeah, looks like we have a good turnout here. So Ashley, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen. If we run into any technical issues, we'll try to pop in and let you know, okay?
All right, great. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Like she said, I'm Ashley and I'm talking to you about sea turtles, but not necessarily in the way that you are probably used to talking about turtles. So we're going to talk about hatchling orientation indexing. I'm sure those words all kind of sound a little foreign. So,
and Ashley, I'm not able to see your presentation, just so you know. I wasn't sure if you.
Okay, let me get that. We'll get you.
There we go.
Okay. Light at a time, something very attainable and something we've been working on and are very excited about. A lot of this work is being provided to you with thanks to the Sea Turtle License Plate Grant. So if you have that license plate that you see on your screen, we cannot thank you enough. You are making these things possible. So also we have FWC. Now, environmental research, because you may not have heard of us before. We are a nonprofit in Melbourne Beach, Florida. We do provide marine science research and education, summer camps. We take people out for guided sea turtle walks at night. And we also do something called nest digs or nest productivity evaluations, which involves digging up hatched out sea turtle nests and analyzing the contents. So we're pretty heavy into sea turtles, but we also like to share the information with the public. And thanks for you joining us today with that. Okay, so we are located in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge. If you haven't heard of this before, you can see where it's located. And the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge is an important nesting ground for loggerhead sea turtles, for most sea turtles actually, but very notably loggerhead sea turtles because it is the #1 nesting site in the world for the loggerhead sea turtles. So pretty big deal. Our research area spans within the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge and also north and south of the area. We were granted in 2018 a marine turtle permit that allowed us to do activities within this area, and very exciting. Do something called Hatchling Orientation Indexing, and that's very different than going out on a night walk or attending a nest dig. It doesn't exactly have open opportunities for the public, but we do share that information with you guys. So I'm going to give you a little background about sea turtles, just because I feel like a lot of these words might be new to you. and it might be a little overwhelming to jump right into what we're doing. So little details on sea turtles. There are 7 species that you can find in all the marine waters except the coldest waters, because they are reptiles. And they have dated back to the time of the dinosaurs, so over 110 million years ago. You might have heard of some of the species that we do have. We have the green sea turtle, loggerhead sea turtle, the leatherback sea turtle, Kemp's Ridley, and staying here. And they are the world's most endangered species. All 7 species are considered endangered. Sea turtles can lay more than 120 eggs per clutch. The clutch is what you call the nest in the ground, and they lay these large egg deposits to encourage the survival.
Hey, Ashley, I'm going to jump in just real quick. I am so sorry for interrupting. We seem to be having some audio issues. It seems like it's a little laggy. Would you be able to move a little closer
until the next nesting
your,
season comes around?
maybe your Wi-Fi router
So
or something like
hatchlings
that?
are not raised by their mothers. Yes. Okay. That's okay. Oh.
Okay. Are you
Sure. Hold on one second.
okay? I'm getting a little bit garbled, so that's the only reason I ask.
Hold on one second. All right, so is that a little better?
Just a tiny bit. We're still having a little trouble hearing you, Ashley.
Okay. All right. So we talked about the clutches and having 4 or 5 clutches of eggs with around 120 eggs. And so these sea turtles are ancient mariners. They travel all over the world, and they come back to the very beaches that they were hatched on. So baby sea turtles, they actually imprint on the magnetic signature of the beaches where they have hatched. They have these amazing magnetite in their brain that allows them to make it back to their very nesting ground of where they hatched from. So here you can see this little hatchling. Not sure how well this one was oriented, but it actually got washed by the waves. So this turtle will flip itself back over and then head straight into the ocean. All right. Okay, so how many hatchlings will contribute to the success of their kind? We want to know why the success is important and why their nesting grounds must be protected. So success is important because sea turtles are more than just a species that travels throughout the world. They bring organisms to and from beaches that contribute to nutrient cycling on that coast. So here in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, we find it extremely important to keep our dunes intact and to be able to have beaches to obviously frequent, but also to be able to put our houses. And those beaches have a nesting ground for these turtles. So the turtles go and lay the eggs, and the eggs contain nitrogen and phosphorus that feed the plants that hold the sand in place. And so they actually are the reason why we have healthy dune systems here in this refuge and this whole area. So a little background for you. If you like living in this area, then the turtles are your best bet for keeping our dunes healthy. Also, we have a lot of lighting ordinances and dune protection that's put in place because of the sea turtles. Okay, so do turtles respond to light? What we know is that sea turtles are deterred, maybe you guys have heard this before, but nesting females are deterred by bright lights. As you can see in the picture, you have a false crawl and a bright light. Now, it would be very challenging for us just to say that that light was the reason why these turtles had false crawled, because half of the time loggerhead sea turtles do tend to false crawl. But what we also know is that lighting is an important cue for baby sea turtles. They orient themselves toward the light, and in this case, it would be in the wrong direction. Here's a picture of a hatchling sea turtle making its way to the ocean. One of the things
Hey, Ashley, we're losing you again, just to let you know.
And has made it so
Ashley, we're not able to hear you, just to let you know.
Oh, okay. Okay, so baby hatchlings are called, or baby sea turtles are called hatchlings. They move toward the brightest direction, which would be the breaking waves of the ocean and the moon that's reflecting over the water. They also move away from dark silhouettes like the dunes. So like I was telling you that we have healthy dune systems here, they should be the darkest part of the beach, not the brightest part. So sea finding behavior actually does occur during every moon cycle. I think commonly you'll hear that turtles will be more likely to come out when there's a full moon, but we've been able to find sea turtle hatchlings during every moon cycle. Okay, so what we're doing here in our 2020 research. So we are doing what's called Characterizing the Light Environment and Hatchling Orientation Index on Brevard South Beaches. Something you guys probably have not quite heard of. So we're quantifying the effects of the artificial lighting on hatchling sea finding behavior, which could potentially foreshadow the conservation status of Florida sea turtles. The reason why is because it takes 30 years for sea turtles to reach egg laying capability. And in 30 years, if we look back and realize, oh, we missed checking out the lighting and making sure that the lighting was fit for sea turtles to be nesting on these beaches, we would have missed the opportunity and been 30 years late. So our populations here in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge and areas surrounding have increased tremendously. And it means that we need to define the efficacy of our local ordinances and see basically, are they working? You can see here, this is an example of one of the mornings that we've had out on the beach. Okay, so what are the benefits to marine sea turtles for doing research and looking into them? There's lots of sea turtle research that's being done, and this is just one aspect of the many things that can affect sea turtles. So promoting the marine habitats used as nesting sites on our coast, it affects all the life stages of turtles. So even though we're looking at hatchlings, we're not necessarily affecting just hatchlings. These are hatchlings that are going to go on and lay eggs for the remainder of their life cycle. So lighting is actually a form of habitat degradation, not something that you normally think of as a predator on sea turtles, but it is considered a predator. Now, misappropriated lighting on the nesting habitat is actually wasted energy. So not only are we wasting energy, but we're also affecting wildlife in a negative way. And we want to reduce these human-related mortality for all the life stages, including hatchlings, nesting females, juveniles, and then reduce the impact of the beachfront lights on the actual beachfront itself. So what we're doing is we're identifying and working to mitigate factors that reduce the natural productivity of these beaches. Here you can see pictures of a couple life stages. We've got a leatherback nest in the bottom left. You can see that that's marked off. In the top left, you have
Hey, Ashley, I think we lost your audio again, just to let you know. All right, I think Ashley might be having some technical issues here, so we'll see if she's able to rejoin us here. I'm going to go through some of these questions that we've been getting, and let's see if I can answer some of these. And Jamil, you're more than welcome to hop back in as well while we wait for Ashley to rejoin us. So let's see here. Beverly asks, are sea turtles endangered due to just plastic or other things too? And if so, what would be the other thing? So Jamil, you can hop in on this as well. Yes, plastics are a big issue for sea turtles, but so are microplastics. That's something that we don't hear a whole lot about, but those plastics break down into smaller and smaller pieces. They don't necessarily just in fact, they don't disappear. So that's another issue. And sea turtles tend to also get caught up in a lot of discarded fishing nets and things of that nature. And so that's another big threat to those sea turtles as well. Ashley, are you okay? Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm not sure where we went, but we're back.
Okay. All right, no worries. You know, whenever we're doing something virtually, that we have to expect there'll be a couple of little technical glitches. So let me see here. You should be able to go ahead and start sharing your screen again.
Okay.
You're on location. Excellent. On location, Ashley Miller Chelberg.
Yes. All right. Working on sharing my screen with you. Okay, so we're on to the objectives of our Characterizing, Hatchling Orientation Indexing, and lighting on the beaches. So I'm not sure how much you guys heard, but I wanted to talk to you about the objectives of our actual study. The objectives are focused on hatchlings, which are baby sea turtles. We look at misappropriated lighting. So misappropriated means that it's not going in the right direction. It's not headed to where it needs to be. If you're watching your television and you think that that light is only going to you, the lighting is also traveling onto the beach if you're in a beachfront condo. Sounds wild, but I experienced it myself. When you're on the beach at night, you can see everything. All right, so our methods for how we're doing all of this quantification of the effects of artificial lighting on sea turtles and their sea finding behavior. So in this photo, you'll see there's lots of orange and green and ocean and beach. And we've been working with Florida Fish and Wildlife, Dr. Tomo Harama and Dr. Blair Witherington. And here we have a very good example of how we actually collect the data. We have 4 stakes or 4 rods that we put into the ground. Actually, we call them dowel rods. And we place one at the nest, just a little bit behind it. And to make sure, obviously, we don't stick the stick into the nest. And then you're going to walk a 10-meter line, which we have our line here. It's considered string. And you stretch that out to a 10-meter circle. And you're going to mark each location with where the hatchling tracks intersect at the most south part with that 10-meter circle. It sounds simple, sticks and string. We measure 2-kilometer stretches of beach for the data collection, and we have 3 beach locations. So one of them is High Tower Beach, a beach in the Atlantic, and then Floridana Beach, which is nestled inside the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge. 30 years ago, studies were actually done with this. The work was done by Dr. Blair Witherington when he was with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And so our study design is aligning with his and then also with current work that's being done by Dr. Tomo Harama. I'm going to give you guys a little diagram here so you can see what exactly is modal divergence and angular range. So modal divergence is considered, as you see, the deviation of most of the hatchlings from the most direct ocean route. So here we have in that little circle a nest, that's where we put the one stake, and then where that line that we drew, that 10-meter line, where it intersected, you have your angular range south, your angular range north, and then where most of the hatchling tracks went is considered the mode, and that would be somewhere in between those 2 ranges. The angular range itself is very important, so we measure that after we get off of the beach and we start doing data analysis. But the angular range is the bearings of the 2 most widely separated hatchling tracks measured from the emergence depression, which we call nest in this photo. So ocean direction, because you might be asking, where is the ocean direction? The ocean, this is as if you were like in a helicopter and you were looking down. So you're looking down on the nest, you're looking at the ocean. That little blue squiggly line is the waves crashing on the beach. The turtles need to go straight from the nest to the ocean, to the shortest route. If they travel to the north or to the south beyond a specific range, then they are considered a degree of disoriented. So the angular range and the modal divergence are very important when you're talking about data collection. So how do we find these nests? We're going to measure, we're putting numbers to them. How are we finding them? We have chosen our beach accesses and we do a walking visual survey. And we do that at our strategic beach points that we go into. And then we look for every single nest that we walk upon or we stumble upon. So that could be 1 nest or that could be 60 nests. And I use those numbers because when we were in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, one of the mornings we were measuring 60 nests. And we do this between the hours of 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. So at 9:30, hopefully we've reached our 2-kilometer boundary point. We tend to go 1 kilometer to the north and 1 kilometer to the south to reach that 2-kilometer transect. And then we measure that nest. Now you might be saying, that nest is going to overlap with another nest. Well, we still do the same methodology. We take our stake and we put it behind the nest depression, even if those nests are 2 feet apart from each other. So yes, our 10-meter circle would be overlapping, but we draw it again so that we're keeping everything consistent. I really liked this picture that you guys see, because what you're looking at is a nesting female coming up the beach. And although you might be thinking, what is she seeing? There are actually hatchling tracks running over that nesting track. So it's kind of two stages of life, which is really fascinating. One coming, one going. And in the top right, you're going to see a very obvious nesting depression. Now that doesn't always look this way. This one's really great. It has hundreds of tracks, and you can see the what we call a bowl very easily. A lot of times that depression might just look like a footprint, and you might have 3 to 5 tracks. So it's not always as easy as it looks in these photos. But for clarity, I gave the ones that you could see really well. All right, so a little bit about data analysis. How are we walking the beach and checking out nesting depressions with hatchling tracks, and then we're turning these into numbers? So the way that we are collecting the data, we have 2 methods. We're using pen and paper, the standard way, and then we also have an app called Theodolite. And the Theodolite app allows us to enter each data entry, and then it turns it into a giant spreadsheet. And so at the bottom here, you might see just a little bit. It has the beach, the data, and the date, the latitude, the longitude, ocean direction north, ocean direction south, which is basically where the ocean meets the beach on the horizon. And we measure that from each data point. So over here on the left, you'll see that there's a blue line that goes north and south, and those north and south coordinates are the ocean direction north and the ocean direction south. And then we've connected that with the nest point. And then you have your black line that is heading almost like a Pac-Man to the right. And that is the angular range north and angular range south. So from those numbers that we implemented, here we have an actual picture, which I think is really fascinating, that you can turn beach tracks and hatchling tracks into a picture. And you'll see there's a little dot, and the dot is your mode, where the majority of the hatchlings headed. Now in the first diagram, it looks really good. You have hatchlings that are making it mostly to the ocean in a small angular range. And then your second picture, you have a very wide angular range that looks like hatchlings were heading to the north and heading to the south. Now, the majority of the hatchlings did head towards the ocean, so that's good. The downside is that a lot of the hatchlings were going in the wrong direction and using up too much energy that was using that and taking away from their trip from the nest emergence down to the sea and then out into the Sargasso Sea to float into seaweed, like you guys have probably seen on some movies. Now, the good news about using paper and pen is because it turns out that occasionally the app gets a little crazy, and when you need to find your data, you don't exactly know where to look in your app. So luckily we have this paper and pen. All right, so some of the results of what we did, we found that when we were plotting the modal divergence and the angular ranges, we first had to turn that into statistical analysis to see if this is what we wanted to do and if this was going to work the way that we wanted. So it turns out that the data was considered heteroscedastic, and that means that it's not keeping with that straight line that you see. So we normalized the data, we did a log transformation, and didn't really see the improvement that we were looking for. So we did a different test called the non-parametric test. All right, so we plotted the data by the beaches themselves, and you can see Floridana. The next one over is going to be Canaveral National Seashore, and you're probably wondering, where did that one come from? Then we have Hightower Beach, and then Indy Atlantic. So a little background about these beaches. Floridana Beach is within the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge. It's also very full of turtles. We have tons of turtles here, and it's what they call like a hot spot within a hot spot. So in Floridana Beach, this is an area that we've been wanting to look into and compare that to other beaches. And now Canaveral National Seashore is considered one of the darkest beaches. It's considered an ideal beach. And so we're using that as the comparison. High Tower Beach is in Satellite Beach. It's in the northern part of Brevard County. It's a very different demographic up there. You have lots of hotels and commercial properties, and the same with Indy Atlantic. Indy Atlantic is a little more residential, but also has significant hotels and a lot more population density. So when you're looking at Floridana and you're comparing that to the Canaveral National Seashore, you can see that the two lines are pretty close to each other. So they are, that's a good sign. The larger the space or the spread in between in this box and whisker plot, you can see the top and the bottom lines. The larger and the taller the box is, the more variability that you have in that beach. So you can see Canaveral National Seashore is going to have less variability. Well, what does that mean if you're a sea turtle? What that means is if you were hatching out of your nest and you're making one of the most dangerous voyages of your first couple of days of life, you are you're not really going to have any consistency for what is going to happen to you. Now in Canaveral National Seashore, you can see that they have the boxes smaller, so the variability is less, which means that they're more likely to have any interruptions, or less likely to have interruptions from their hatch out experience, from that frenzy, the race to the sea. Floridana, not quite as tall, so it's a little bit taller, but not quite as tall as Indy Atlantic and High Tower. So that's telling us that there's also lower variability, which means the sea turtles have a more likely chance to be oriented properly than compared to some of the other beaches. Now in Floridana Beach, we have lots of open property. We have undeveloped areas, although that is rapidly changing. We do not have seawalls. We don't allow seawalls in this area. And we have beach renourishment, which I know concerns a lot of people, but when compared to seawalls, it's definitely a better option for the beach renourishment. So one of the things that we have here is also a lighting ordinance. That means that we are looking into what time people are turning their lights on, turning their lights off, and what's allowed on the beaches. Now we do have the same things throughout Brevard County, but within the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, the ordinances are just a little bit more strict because this is that #1 nesting site in the world. Okay, so on your right, you also have the modal divergence, and that was when we were saying that how many hatchlings deviated from their ocean direction. And you can see here, Canaveral National Seashore is not quite as small as it was on the other diagram, which tells us that there are opportunities for all the hatchlings to head in different directions versus the ocean, maybe not so much in the widespread. So on this, you're going to look at Indy Atlantic all the way to the right because their box is very tall. And a tall box means greater variability, which means that their likelihood of becoming more disoriented is a lot higher, unfortunately. And you can see compared to High Tower, which is a fairly quiet beach, there's not a lot of property that's at that actual beach access, but there's a lot of sky glow. So when I mentioned that there's a lot more residential or commercial and still some residential properties up there, there isn't at the actual beach site that we were collecting the data. One thing that is really fascinating is that there's lots of that light that's coming around from all angles. And so if you compare the angular range chart on the left and your modal divergence on the right, you can see that what this tells you, and you're probably like, what do you mean? But this tells you that there's not a lot of lighting directly on the beach to affect the angular range, but there is a lot of sky glow in the modal divergence that's causing the hatchlings to go a different direction because of disorientation from sky glow. So this is really fascinating, and who knew you could know so much just from some squares and lines, right? Okay, so the question is, what can you do? Here I've explained all these things about turtles and why hatchlings are so important and how they help us keep the beaches with proper dune systems, and they bring organisms from all over the world. And not only that, they're loved by pretty much everyone. I haven't met very many people who don't like sea turtles. And then you're saying, okay, well, I'm not going on the beach and I haven't, done all these hatchling orientation indexing, and, what exactly is my role in this? And so your role is actually a lot more important than you realize. You can turn off your visible lights on the beaches. So here in this photo in the bottom right, you can see that is a condo. And although they did a great job trying to work with the lighting ordinances, lighting should not be visible. The lighting source should not be visible from the beach. And this is a picture that I took with my iPhone. So you can imagine the quality really should be very low, and yet you can see everything really well. So turn off any of your visible lights on the nesting beaches. Definitely do not go on the beach and take photos of hatchlings at night with your iPhone. They're just really not ready for your iPhone in that super bright light. Same goes for nesting females. I know that everyone likes to bring their red lights onto the beach and look at turtles. And there was a time, years ago when we thought that those types of behaviors were acceptable and that sea turtles couldn't see them. And what we're finding is that all artificial lighting actually disorients and disrupts sea turtles. So if you want to go onto the beach, I promise you, your lights will adjust to the dark beaches. Obviously, a good opportunity would be to find a flat beach where there is nesting sea turtles, or better yet, really come onto a sea turtle night walk. So when you come on the guided night walk, you're going to learn things that you may have never learned before. As Erin was saying, working in marine science, you think you get exposed to almost everything, but there's always something new to experience. I've had people that come on our guided night walks and they've lived in this area for decades, and yet they come and they bring new questions to the table and things that are new information to them, and even questions that get us thinking. So coming on a guided night walk is really important. And if you wanted to see like hatchlings and you came out in the morning and you wanted to take photos, well, clearly, as long as there's no light involved, you don't need a flash, you're not standing over them with your cell phone, you should be okay. Well, now what happens, and I've seen a couple of videos on the internet, what happens when you're standing over a hatched out nest with your phone and you have that light on so that you can get the good video, the hatchlings are trying to orient themselves to the ocean, and instead the light is actually above them, and it causes them to go in a circle, and that's called circlers, and that's because of phototaxis. A lot of animals and creatures who use phototaxis, they orient themselves at a 45-degree angle to the light, and that causes them to continuously orient themselves in a 45-degree angle when the light is over top of them. So it causes them to go into circles. If you were using your cell phone over a nest, you could actually disorient the entire nest, and it's really not a good thing. You don't want to be that person. So the best bet is to come onto a guided nest dig in the morning or on a night walk to be able to get that really good and rich experience. Now, a little bit about lighting. If you're like, I live on the beach and I'm wondering what I can do, or I stayed at this hotel and I'm wondering what they can do, you can look around and just try to see if they have light shielding. So that means that the light source itself can't be seen. You can use low pressure sodium vapor lighting or turtle lights instead of normal lights. And then you can see, even in the bottom left photo, you can see a ring of light. Now, you may not see a lot of light directly beaming onto the beach, but what you have there is sky glow. And when I was talking to you about the orientation, that does affect the modal divergence, and that's not good either. So if you do have a house on the ocean, or you're staying in an Airbnb, which is really important. We have a lot of Airbnbs in this area, and a lot of people come here. They don't realize that their impact is actually negatively affecting hatchlings. So you want to tint or use curtains to cover the windows that are visible from the beach. You want to report any disoriented hatchlings found away from the beach to law enforcement or FWC, which is the numbers right there. Some very trendy things you could do would be to pack in and pack out. That means anything that you bring to the beach that you either bring home with you or it could be reusable. And definitely, like we said, do not use any lights on the beach. Participate in our watches. And some of my favorite things is use recyclable shopping bags and water bottles. You can put cool stickers all over them and talk about saving the turtles and even be an advocate for sea turtles themselves. You also want to get a sea turtle license plate because we're a huge fan, right? Without that sea turtle license plate, a lot of research would not be able to be done. And they're doing all types of sea turtle research all over the state, all over the world. But here in Florida, it's a really big deal. So even if you just want to get, I think they call them vanity plates, where you can put them on the front of your car, every little bit helps. You can see in the top left picture, even when you're just walking the beach and you're picking up trash, you can make a huge difference because hatchlings love to get big and they like to eat everything. So these little pieces in that person's hand can actually become sea turtle food. So everything that you pick up and is just a little piece in the puzzle, and you're making a really big difference. So I want to say thanks to our whole team. We've had a really great group of researchers, and it's been a really fun summer last year. We're continuing into this summer. We're very excited for year 2 of Hatchling Orientation Indexing. So thank you to Blair and Tomo, FWC, Melissa, Beth, Joy, Scott, Johan, Sarah, Liz, of course, my family for sharing all my time, and all our volunteers. You guys are amazing, and our board members. And we're ready for questions.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of questions, so
good.
we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And if we do not have time to get to your questions today, and it's a really burning question and you really want to know the answer, you are welcome to email us. Jamil will put our email address in the chat, and you can get a hold of us that way as well. So our first question comes from Margaret, and she asks, does the data that you get from indexing show any trends about the impact of climate change? And we might be having a little bit of technical difficulty here. We'll wait for it to catch up. Okay.
Yes.
Did you hear that? Do you need me to repeat that?
Oh, I did. I think you said that there was extra questions that we would try to get to as many as possible.
Yes, and I had the first question. I'll go ahead and ask it again. It comes from Margaret. She asks, does the data that you get from indexing show any trends about the impact of climate change?
At this time, we're in such an early stage of our data that we don't exactly have the opportunity to look just yet. So that's why we're really excited for this summer to be able to see hatchling trends, nesting trends, and hopefully in the next like 5, we're looking into the future and then comparing to the past. So we're kind of stuck in the middle of the two. When we have a little bit more data, we'll be able to look at from 30 years ago. So we're not quite there yet, but we're definitely well on our way.
Okay, great.
I don't know if I told you guys, we're in the Archie Carr Refuge, and there's no internet here ever.
Yeah, if anybody, I know some people are from the Melbourne area, so they're probably aware, but yeah, in the refuge, it's a refuge. So I'm sure the reception is not great. So, okay. So Carol has another question. She asks, how far will sea turtles travel before returning to their home beach? I know it probably kind of depends on the species, but just in general.
So the hatchlings, they'll travel out to the Sargasso Sea. And then when they're a little bigger and they get to about like dinner plate size, what they like to say, a lot of them will travel back into the Indian River Lagoon. So they'll be right here on our coast while they're getting big, and they're going to a protected estuary to make sure that they're also with other things that are little, because they don't want to be eaten by anything. Unfortunately, hatchlings get consumed by pretty much everything. So they want to go to areas that are going to make it so they can get a little bit bigger. And then after that, they travel, I mean, the world. So you have some that are in the Bahamas. You can definitely follow toward turtles. Sea Turtle Conservancy does a really great job of mapping out where turtles go. There's a new work that's being done, and it's showing that the Keys is being a huge part of a nursery area for sea turtles. So there's a lot of developing information about that. But we like to see them here in our lagoon. You can come and check them out on the rocks at the inlet. A lot of little babies and juveniles and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. And then Sophie has a good question. She asks, are invasive predators a problem on the beaches you work on? If so, which species?
We have pretty much everything here. Invasive species, which include even like fire ants, for example, they are a huge predator for sea turtle hatchlings. So absolutely. Trash pandas, or I like to call them, the raccoons, they're a big issue here. We do even have a couple of coyote, which we're not proud to say. I think we have like one or two, and we've lost one. So in the Panhandle, they have a bigger problem with coyotes, but we definitely have invasive species here. They're just not quite like what you would think of as like the lionfish or something more significant that you see, but everyday things like plants, roots can be a predator for hatchling eggs. It's a different level of looking at it, but definitely invasive species are a big deal. Plants, creatures.
So it's the
insects.
rooting plants on the beaches that can sometimes cause an issue.
Yeah, rooting plants, fire ants, raccoons, anything that's going to be in the dune system, coyotes. They're going to be more of on the beach itself. Dogs. Okay. Dogs are a huge predator on the beach. Dogs are not allowed on the beach in Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge.
Okay. All right.
So yes, definitely an issue here.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that's one of the reasons why you guys researchers think that sea turtles have so many eggs, right? Because it's just the predation is just incredible on a nest. Yeah. Anyway.
They like to say 1 in 1,000 makes it to
1 in 1,000.
adulthood. So
so.
Not a very good outcome.
Yeah.
Just gonna have to lay a lot of nests for that.
Yes. Yeah, that's why they have a lot of babies. So, all right. And then Peyton asks, has the Texas winter storms affected the sea turtles? If so, how much impact has it made? I know there was some cold shocked sea turtles that were rescued in Texas. Do you have any updates on those guys? Were they returned to the ocean?
So I did hear that a lot of those were being returned to the ocean. I heard that some of them were actually being brought here for the warmer waters. We're not going to be able to see the impacts right at this moment. So sea turtles are tricky, right? So it takes 30 years to be able to get to egg laying age. And so there's a lag in all of the events that happen. You can see that there might be an obvious decline in nesting females, but that hasn't even happened for this summer yet. So we're just hopeful that that's not going to affect it, but we're doing the very best that we can. It seems like, especially everybody in Texas, I know lots of people here wanted to travel to Texas, but unfortunately in this climate, it's not an opportunity to be in locations with a lot of people and traveling from one area to the next.
Right, sure.
So they've been working really hard to to work together and to get those turtles rehabilitated and back into the waters where they belong.
Okay, great. Well, Ronan kind of has a similar question. The question is, how resilient are sea turtles to fluctuations in weather patterns and natural disasters, particularly things like maybe earthquakes or fires? I would assume hurricanes as well.
So sea turtles are relatives to dinosaurs. So you'd think that they have seen almost everything. I can imagine these turtles have seen tsunamis that I can only imagine to experience. So I do believe that they're very resilient. The unfortunate side is the things they're not resilient is like your phone. That's a big one that we talk about. Like going out with different lighting sources, that's just not part of a natural experience that they would have. But as far as their ocean experience, they are really resilient. The increases in hurricanes and that kind of thing is a little unfortunate, but I'm at over 100 10 million years, I think that they have seen plenty of fluctuations. So yes, resiliency. I've seen sea turtles with one back flipper. They use their back flippers to dig their nest, and they had one rear flipper and were digging a nest with their one flipper. So fascinating. They can do amazing things.
Yeah, no, I think they're pretty tough animals.
Yeah, their covering of their nest may not have been quite as tidy as some of their sisters, but she managed.
Hey, you know what? If she got the job done, that's the important part. So, all right. So let me take a look here. We do have some questions. It looks like maybe from students in school.
Okay.
So I can ask some of those as well. Someone says, do the hatchlings hatch at night in order to see the ocean better? So I assume like maybe they're looking for the moon. Like, why are they hatching at night? Or do they mostly just hatch at night, or is it different times of the day?
So hatchlings do tend to nest or to hatch out at night. That would be the greatest opportunity for survival, or what we call survivorship for them. So less predators at night. Birds are a huge predator for them. They actually hatch out of their eggs and rustle themselves together. And after 3 days, or about 3 days, then they all hatch out together when the temperature has dropped, which is generally at night. I mean, it's fascinating how creatures use all these cues to be able to survive. So they use the temperature. When the temperature drops low, which tends to be in the evening hours, they'll all hatch out together and race as fast as they possibly can, because that trip from the nest to the sea is the most dangerous.
Right.
So they do hatch out in the morning too, especially when the temperatures get a little off, like they're a little lower, and then they'll come out. Or if it's actually warmer and that speeds up their metabolism and they're like, okay, I'm ready to go, my muscles are stretched out. But for the most part, they want to hatch out at night. The only times that we see, I mean, we've seen them hatch out and on some of our night walks, but in the morning, it's very rare to see a nest emerge on its own in the morning. We tend to see the hatchlings that are either waiting or may not have made the trip on their own in our surveys in the morning.
Okay, great.
Oh, so and I was gonna tell you, they are looking. So they're looking for the light, and they're not necessarily looking for the moon. They're looking for the light that's reflecting off of the white water, like the ocean crashing, and the on the ocean surface is the brightest part. It's like a mirror with the moon on it. So that's what they're looking for. They're moving away from darkness and then towards light.
Right. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to turn your lights off during nesting season, right? Or else those Okay. So we've had a couple of questions about how do you tell whether a sea turtle is a girl or a boy? Does it have to do with the temperature of the sand, etc.? Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So sea turtle hatchlings are determined by the temperature that's within their nest. So the higher the temperature, the more likely they're going to be females. And the lower the temperature, the more they'll be male. So the higher is about 88 degrees. And then somewhere between like 87, 86, they're going to be a mix. Now, when someone was asking about climate change, that is something that we like to talk about. It's called hot chicks, cool dudes. It's the opposite of alligators. We have seen almost all females here on our beaches because the beaches are so warm. So we do see a little bit with the climate change. We're seeing a change of population. We're not studying that necessarily. I think University of Central Florida is doing a really great job looking into that, and some other research organizations that are looking into the temperature dependence and changes on the beaches.
Okay. And then do you guys, do you tag sea turtles? Do you keep track of them, or are you just counting the hatchlings that come out?
So we live on what's called an index nesting beach, or we're sampling an index nesting beach. So that beach is being monitored by the University of Central Florida Marine Turtle Research Group. There we go. And they do all the tagging here. They're measuring the amounts of nests, that kind of thing. What we're doing is very specific to these hatchlings making it to the ocean. So their survivorship, their orientation, not necessarily tagging these little ones. So we just want to see how well they're getting to the ocean, because that trip to the ocean is one of the most dangerous ones they'll make in their entire life.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, we want them to make it there as fast as possible and as easy. We don't want them to use any more energy than they need to.
Okay. And we've had a couple of questions concerning whether sea turtles have like a sixth sense that, that you're speaking a little bit about, they can sense magnetics and things like that. We've had a couple of questions about that. Do you guys know really how that works? I mean, I've heard different theories on how sea turtles find their way back to, the beach that they were born on, or close to it at
Yeah.
least. I've heard everything from they smell their way back. I've heard the magnetic one as well. So would you talk a little bit about that and kind of what you feel it is?
Yeah, so it's they have magnetite in their brain. So they have oriented themselves to that magnetic code that they're imprinting on. And so it's like in their brain. they have like a little geo map that it's like they've downloaded, and it tells them where to go, when to turn. It's like mini Alexa.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I can get lost going to a place that I've been to a million times before. And these guys can go all the way up to the Arctic and find their way back to like the Florida beach where they were born. So that's amazing to me. We've also had a lot of questions about when the hatchlings are still in the eggs. So like, how do they breathe? How long does it take them to hatch? How deep are they buried? Things like that.
Okay, so the nesting females, they do a really great job. Since they're not going to stay with those hatchlings for the remainder of their life, they come up, they lay the eggs, and then that's it. That's their one chance to be a good mom. So they need to really nail it. And they dig the nest in a specific location that wouldn't have a lot of light. So if you laid your eggs in an area where there's a lot of light, you would know in your sea turtle mom brain that that's not a good spot for your hatchlings, because they're going to be disoriented when they're hatching out, and that's not going to be good for the survival of their species. So she's going to make sure she's in a good location, and the lighting is just right, or at least the best she can do at that moment. And then she digs her hole, drops all the eggs in, and then as she's patting down, she uses her back flippers to pat down air within that nest itself. So they're not like a ping pong ball. They're about the size, but they breathe air. Sea turtles breathe air, and they have to breathe air. So when the water washes over their nest, it'll push air down and pull air out. But if the water sits too long over the nest, then they will not have enough air at all. So she puts them in the right location on the beach, and then make sure that they have some air in there to breathe. And then after 55 days, which is the day here, the incubation period in the refuge, they all start to hatch out. They move around and rustle each other up, and they use their egg tooth to crack open their egg and to start moving around and get out of there.
Okay.
So that's it for them. They might pass their mom and give them a flipper high five in the ocean lanes, but that's about it.
That's about it. Okay. Well, we're kind of coming to the end of our time, so I want to ask another question that we've been getting a lot of, and basically it is, how can I help, especially if I'm not in Florida, if I live in a different state or a different country where we don't necessarily see sea turtles very often, so what can I do outside of Florida? And also we're getting questions, what can I do on the beach to make sure I'm not disturbing those nests?
Okay, so we'll start with outside of Florida first. Supporting sea turtle agencies are a big deal. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. So any donations that you give these organizations goes towards fueling this research and all the work that we're doing to conserve sea turtles, and then be able to provide the information to the public. So that's a huge part. Just because you can't go on the beach and do something yourself doesn't mean that you can't help someone else do the work that and be a part of that. So even though you might be donating money or donating time, you are a huge part of the work that's being done. So donating to those organizations is a big deal. And then also, I did mention like the sea turtle license plate. Even just talking about sea turtles, when somebody sees that on your car, let's say you live in like New York, but you don't, you want a sea turtle license plate, you can put one on the front of your car. And then that becomes a conversation piece, and you become an advocate for sea turtles themselves. So just coming to these events and learning about sea turtles, spending time supporting organizations, it's a big part of it. Now, if you were on the beach and you saw injured wildlife, obviously calling FWC is very important, and notifying authorities.
even if you just call one of the local organizations here, our organization, anyone, we can always help you in the right direction. And then picking up trash. So it sounds gross, but the fact that we even pick up other people's trash or our own trash on the beach is kind of gross in itself. So whenever I take people out for beach cleanups, I like to remind them that I hope you hate it. I hope that this is the worst thing you've ever done, and that you never, ever want to throw anything out your window or on the beach or on the ground or your gum or any of this stuff ever again, because it's so gross. And the wildlife eats that. So I don't think we realize how much of an impact just our little behaviors can be. Making small changes, even within our house, reusing trendy reusable bags, like saying no to Ziplocs, and just making it a point to be intentional with your plastic use, switching to cardboard when you can, or just making little adjustments is a big deal. So
yeah,
did I answer all the questions with that?
Yeah, no, I think so. I was just going to add, I think it's interesting that, we get questions like that a lot at the aquarium, especially for people who don't live in Florida. Maybe they live, somewhere that's totally landlocked. And, we always tell them it's all still connected, and some of the trash, the plastic trash that you throw away, even if you throw it, you're in the Midwest and you throw it away, statistically, probably at least some of that is going to end up in the ocean. So even if you in a landlocked area reduce that single use plastic usage, anything that you can do is ultimately going to help the oceans as well. So
yeah, I mean, and releasing balloons, that's a big thing for us. But following these organizations like ours, for example, on social media, or just checking us out and seeing what we're all about and following, it gives you like a gentle reminder of, we post things all the time about what we find and what you could do, ways that you could be better stewards, or ways that we're succeeding in many ways, many things. So following these pages and just kind of keeping up with it is a good way too, to keep getting that reminder.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Ashley, I want to thank you so much for all of the time you've spent with us this morning. And I want to apologize to those. I know that we had a lot of questions come in. We had close to 100 questions. There's just no way
wow.
to answer all of those. So Jamil is going to put our email address in the chat for you guys. Like I said, if you guys have a burning question about sea turtles that you'd really like us to answer, you're more than welcome to email us at smseducation@si.edu. We will do our best to get back with you. Please join us for our next Marine Science in the Morning. It's going to be 2 weeks from today on March 24th. And we are going to be joined by Dr. Olivia Rhodes, who's going to be talking about her research with seagrass beds in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. And it should be really an interesting presentation. If you want to register for any upcoming events, whether it's Marine Science in the Morning or any of the other digital programs we have coming up soon, the link to our events page is now in the chat. We just do it through Facebook. We're not super fancy. So you can register through there for any of those upcoming programs. And Jamil will also be putting information in there about our YouTube channel. If you'd like to visit there, we have a lot of educational videos. We have archived copies of previous Marine Science in the Morning programs. This particular program will probably be up there tomorrow, as well as our website as well. If you'd like more information on any of the programs we do, any school groups, anything like that. We do have distance learning and virtual field trips available, all for free as well. So especially if you are a classroom teacher, I highly suggest you check it out. We'd love to work with you on that. And again, thank you so much for joining us, Ashley. And
thank you. Thanks for sticking by my technical difficulties.
Oh, yeah, no, there's certain spots in Florida that are a little spotty with.
We're there.
Yeah. So, all right, and thank you, everybody who participated. Thank you to the students who have stuck with us as well. Have a great day, and we'll see you 2 weeks from now.
Bye.
All right, bye, guys.